Hello. Hello, hello. Hi there. I do indeed, Fish. I do indeed. Okay, much though I think this music is fantastic. Right. Okay. Hello to Night, Fish, and Dav. How you doing, people? Yes, sorry about that. I had to reapprove my OBS and my chatty. Relink them to my Twitch account, which was fun. I don't know why, but never mind. So, yes, this is Deadlands Noir, that old-time religion. Which is set in the same timeline as Deadlands the Weird West. So that was the 19th century. Fast forward to the 1930s, 40s, and this is where we are. So, exclamation mark CW will give you the outline content warnings. I can only give general ones because I don't know the details of the game. This is my first play. So, but I think we're safe in saying we can expect noir tropes, possibly outdated era appropriate terminology, and we'll just take it from there. Oh, okay. So, this is a visual novel. Wish me luck. Hello, Sam. Hello, Sage. Okay, let's bring it on. It's recommended you play the episodes in order. Well, okay, here's the thing. Let's do that then. The priest, a rabbi, and a Hungan walked through the door. No, it wasn't the start of a joke. I really wish it was. Oh, love this already. It was instead the start of a couple of really bad days. So you're only going to get Harvey's narration, I feel. His name's Harvey, and for God's sake. Cthulhu references. Uh-huh. You know what? I'm thinking that preferences is now. Let's go with slow the text speed down. That was the priest, small portly man in the usual black slacks and shirt, with that white square for a collar that's the usual dead giveaway. He looked as nervous as a rabbit at a coyote convention, eyeing me and much of the decor of my ramshackle office with barely concealed discomfort. I apologise, you're probably going to get a chunk of this accent. I'm so sorry. Oh, that's fantastic. Warhammer Fantasy Roleplayers, Grubby Fantasy. That's great. So yeah, I apologise for the accent. Apologise if you are American or of that accent or capable of doing that accent. Sorry. It's not meant to be a pastiche. It's done the best I can. Do I get to click through now? Yes. I couldn't really blame him. I looked like 100 miles of bad road on the best of days. My last 3 cleaning ladies all quit after less than a week each on the job, and there are things in my office even I don't like to look at if I can help it. The rabbi was less nervous by far. In fact, he looked entirely amused. Uh-huh. Yeah, don't trust you, mate. I don't trust any of these people, to be honest. They're the clients. I don't trust them. That's just me. Plus, I'm not sure about the private eye on his door. I instantly liked this guy. He was burly, but he had the build of someone who worked hard most of his life and knew how the world worked. He just had a way of putting folks at ease, which is probably a good thing if you're going to be a Jew in the Deep South. Wow, I did warning content warnings, era-appropriate attitudes. Okay, we are in New Orleans. This explains the hunger. Basically, if you want to play the class Blessed in Deadlands, this is a pretty wide range of what you can come up with. They have power in Deadlands. It's not just rabble-rousing and comfort to the believers. I don't know who Mama Bonte is, but yeah. The Hungan was wearing a rather dapper grey suit with a matching fedora, and though it was clear he didn't need it for his lean athletic frame, he had a fine black cane with a silver head of some kind of lizard on it. Don't trust this man. That's probably enchanted, almost certainly magic. Probably ritual. Excellent. Why is your phone transparent? I've just noticed you can see his filing cabinet through it. Huh? With eyes almost as black as his skin, he studied me hard, and I shifted under his gaze. Something I can do for you, gentlemen, or are you here to take turns trying to save my sorry soul? Each of the men chuckled at that, even the priest, though the Hungan never took his eyes off me. No, absolutely, Sam. No, never have. The other two seemed to be waiting on him, so the room got quiet as we all looked at him. Finally, he grunted with some semblance of satisfaction. Yep, he's the one. He got touched by something. Oh, if you got touched by something, well, you want to report that. They reckon I've got a strong soul and a good heart. Excellent. Gentlemen, I'm sure this all means something to you, but the only reason I've not been inclined to toss you collectively out on your keisters is because I don't tend to like to get on the wrong side of the clergy. And Lizard Kane here had the good sense to mention Mama Bonte, who I owe a couple of favours to. Still, you're cutting into some prime drinking time here, so if there's a point... More grins, and the rabbi laughed congenially, plopped down in the chair right in front of my desk. The Hungan grabbed a stool nearby, and the priest went over and sat gingerly down on the couch I usually use for a bed when I'm too tired or drunk, or usually both, to trudge home to my apartment. Oh, well, he's a step up from many. He doesn't sleep in his office all the time. I figured it best not to tell him how much blood and booze had been soaked in by those cushions. He didn't look like he needed any more reasons to be nervous. Okay, hello Saul, nice to meet you. So, Bishop Brian McClarty, and Daddy Thunderhand. Oh wow, that is a metal name. One of the Hungan Assagues of New Orleans, so that's high ranking. I was a bit thrown by these introductions, as I'd heard of all 3 of these men. Rabbi Saul Kosh was the leader of the largest Jewish temple in the greater New Orleans area, while Bishop Brian McClarty was one of the movers and shakers of the city's Catholic community. As for Daddy Thunderhand, there were few in New Orleans who didn't know of the fat man who could make it rain and call his faithful to war if he so chose. Most of the police department was on orders to just leave him alone unless they directly witnessed him murdering someone. Oh, good. Okay. Just what were 3 of the most powerful religious leaders of Narlands and the surrounding parishes doing in my humble office? I was pretty sure I was not gonna like the answer. I hate being right about such things. Okay, what do you want? I never like conversations that start with, "May I call you Harvey?" No. I nodded at the disarming rabbi. What we have here is a very difficult situation, one that promises to make a lot of trouble for a lot of good people if we don't take action. You see, there's a reason 3 gents like us can get along well enough to come see you all at once like this. Yeah, they're not exactly cooperative, are they? We even get together and play cards over good wine and nosh, talk theology without coming to blows, and genuinely like each other. Okay, freaking me out now. Saul beamed at both the others, who smiled affably enough back at him to let me know he wasn't just throwing a line. It wasn't always like this. Got to expect that religious divides can be hard to overcome, and they can make for some ugly relations to the folks who believe so differently. Poor Brian's predecessors were constantly having to beat their parishioners over their head and shoulders with the New Testament, trying to keep them from heading over to the voodoo parts of the city and setting fires. Which would have been a bad move, since that means Daddy's folks would have fought back with God knows what and turned the whole city into an abattoir. Naturally, my people would just have been crushed in the crossfire, them as didn't side with the Catholics in the first place. Do you know why none of this has come to pass, Harvey? Why we haven't had nasty little religious wars in one of the most vulnerable cities in this part of the world? I have to say, Saul, I have not given it much thought. Guess maybe I should have, but... I shrugged and took another sip of bourbon. I almost offered Bishop McClarty a swig as he looked like he needed it. Instead, I passed the bottle to Lady Thunderhead, who smiled and accepted. Then the bishop spoke up. Mr. Jenkins, it's well that you don't concern yourself with such matters normally. That is, in fact, a testament to the man we've come to ask your help in finding. He's the reason our communities are at peace with each other, and why we're even able to come together in times of crisis and work as a single community when the need arises. Daddy Thunderhead chimed in. I'm not even going to try, because he's going to have a voice that comes from my boots, and I can't get down there. So there should be somebody else, yeah. It took me another minute, but it finally hit me. There ought to be a Baptist here. I guess that would be the good Reverend Kellerman. I need to look that name up, because that worries me. They all smiled at that, and Bishop Brian went on, actually seeming to relax a little as he did. Okay, so have you lost your Baptist minister? The man most responsible for the relative harmony in New Orleans enjoys from its spiritual communities. He preaches a message that's big on love thy neighbour and judge not lest ye be judged, and he does so with great charisma and leadership. In short, he's kept the peace among us for over 20 years. It could well have been. Also, Kellerman, I think, is Johnny Alpha's real name. Which is slightly tweaking me off. Now he's missing, and we're all more than a little worried because it's pretty clear there's been foul play, and we think it's way beyond the ability of the police to handle. But nobody can handle the pearls we take to work here. Yeah, I can't get down there. No, not happening. The whole city is starting to go dark already, with demons and shadows playing on the edges like they're waiting for something to start. Oh, that's endearing. The Hungan said all of this like it was perfectly normal and not at all like something out of a cheap pulp novel. Creelman, thank you, Fish. The trouble was, I knew he was only too right about what really lived in the shadows. I'd already been chewed up and spit out by a few ugly beasts from beyond in my time here. This was, in fact, part of why I owed Mama Bonte a couple of favours. So you gentlemen want to hire me to find Reverend Kellerman. And when I say hire, I hope you realize that the good heart and knowing Mama Bonte favors don't help pay the rent on this office, or put more bourbon on the shelf, so... Another hearty laugh from Saul brought a return grin from me. Not to worry, we'll be paying you top rates plus expenses and a bonus you can take a vacation with if you find Paul. There's plenty of wealthy and powerful folks who support our cause to keep the peace in New Orleans, so the funds are there. Okay, cool. In fact, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a check and slid it across the desk to me. That's when I knew I was in trouble. It was the biggest retainer check I'd ever received. The three gentlemen pointed me in 3 different directions, after which they left to tend to their flocks and see what they could do about the supernatural threats they each perceived. Bishop McClarty encouraged me to start with the scene of the crime itself, which was Reverend Kelman's office at the St. Charles Avenue Baptist Church, one of the oldest churches in the city. He told me to look up the church secretary, Miss Mary Carmichael. Hey, Molia! Just to confuse you, I'm doing a bad accent today. Saul said I should go see Reverend's daughter, Rachel. He seemed pretty adamant about it, and he warned me she was already being guarded by the police against possible kidnapping. Daddy Thunderhead recommended I look into the dealings of one Gospel Devino, a.k.a. Brother Gospel Divine. A newcomer to the Big Easy, he'd been setting up a huge tent revival out on the edges of the city, preaching about cleaning the sin out of New Orleans. The other two weren't so sure, but the Hungan seemed convinced that the coming troubles were somehow linked to him. Naturally, I also figured on a fourth path, the one that always did me some good when things got weird and potentially dangerous. The streets of NOLA are full of wise and sharp-eyed folks, and with the right word here, the right amount of money there, a man can find out almost anything. If he doesn't find a bullet or a knife in his back first. Right. So, we have choice. Where are we going to investigate first? Do I go to the scene of the crime? Do I hit the streets? Do I visit the daughter? Or do I go look up the dodgy revivalists? Thinking at the moment, scene of the crime might be the most time-pressing, to be honest. Yeah. There's just something about blondes. Mary Carmichael had that peaches and cream complexion you hear women going on and on about. Long, wavy hair that flowed around her face as she bent down over to her desk, looking at some paperwork. A figure that went a few degrees shy of plump in every perfect way you might hope to find in a farmer's daughter on a cold and rainy night out in the middle of the sticks. Well, that's evocative. This was not the kind of woman I expected to be working as a church secretary, but I always welcome pleasant surprises. My life was entirely full of the other kind these days. I'm sorry, Mr. Jenkins, but the last appointment I have on record for the Reverend was with his daughter Rachel. She was supposed to meet him at 7:30 p.m. here to discuss some matters of their estate, and then they were to go out to dinner. It was well past my normal quitting time, so I wasn't here when... She paused, and tears started to well up in her robin-egg blue eyes as she looked at me. Oh, she did it. I'm so sorry. I just can't imagine why anyone would do this to him. He's such a kind and giving man, so full of the Spirit of the Lord. If the music, by the way, is too loud, let me know, okay? I've got it balanced by my speech on the graphic, but of course I'm not necessarily hearing what you guys are. Yeah. Mate, I've read quite a lot of noir, and I've watched quite a lot of noir. I'm looking at her very askance. She'll either never turn up again, or she probably did it. She fingered her rather ostentatious golden diamond cross with worry. Oh, why? I moved past her and into the Kellerman's inner office, which was an absolute wreck. The two flatfoots who'd let me into the place were hovering over by the other door, mostly in the view of Mary Carmichael. Neither had the look of future detectives about them. I looked around at the scene and I immediately figured out a few things. Someone either wanted to make this look particularly violent or just really didn't care what got messed up when they came for Reverend Paul Kellerman. Despite the mess, though, there was no sign of blood. Either someone did a fine clean-up job or the preacher didn't put up much of a fight. Hi, Chrono. Nice to see you, sir. Yeah, Spirit of the Lord, absolutely. Also, another one I have to apologise for the accent to. The place had been dusted for prints, of course, but as many folks as came and went through here, that didn't seem likely to turn up much. As I continued wandering slowly around his office, I asked Miss Mary, "Did the Reverend have any enemies, ma'am? Was he in any kind of feud or quarrel you know about?" "I tell you, Mr. Jenkins, Paul was one with the Lord. He truly loved all his brothers and sisters in Christ." Oh, she was so knocking him off. I began to get the feeling from the look in her eyes as she talked about him that perhaps she wanted to know more of that love than most. From what I'd heard, however, the man had been utterly faithful to his wife, even after she died. Even so, Miss Carmichael, men like the Reverend can stir up people who don't necessarily believe in what he does, right? I gave her a steady, reassuring gaze, wanting her to believe I really was here to help. And indeed, thank you very much for dropping by. It's lovely to have people popping in. I appreciate the effort you guys are making. Apparently I passed some kind of test, because she glanced nervously at the two donut eaters before making her way conspiratorially over to me. In a much quieter voice, she said, "Well now, he did have some real concerns about that new fellow with the tent revival that recently arrived in town." "The one they call Brother Gospel Divine?" "The very one, Mr. Jenkins. Their one and only meeting did not go well at all, I'm sad to say. Brother Divine seemed to think the Reverend's overly tolerant nature towards the other religious groups was a sure sign that the apocalypse would begin right here in New Orleans. I mean, the very idea." She looked genuinely outraged, clearly remembering the incident. This dame had it bad for the Reverend, that was for certain. "Is there anything else you can think of, ma'am? Anything at all?" "Well, I don't like to start rumours, Mr. Jenkins." "Mary's life is clearly in danger. They're not rumours if they are clues I can use to save him." She seemed to grasp that. Her eyes got wide, then narrow. "Well, Mr. Jenkins, it's just I kept noticing how that Gospel Divine and Paul's daughter Rachel kept looking at each other. It seemed pretty certain to me they knew each other from somewhere, and there was a lot more going on there than the Reverend knew. I had meant to warn him, but it's just not that easy to bring a thing like that up, you understand?" I nodded. "Thank you, Miss Carmichael. You've been very helpful." Just as I turned to leave, I noticed two coffee mugs on the desk. One, which seemed likely to be the Reverend's from where it was laying on its side, had a strange stain in the bottom. I grabbed it, took a sniff, and then scraped out some residue and put it on a small metal vial I keep for such occasions. The other, still mostly full of coffee, had lipstick on it. I took the stuff I scraped out of the Reverend's mug over to a friend of mine's shop. Doc Carver's got all the science learning I could ask for, and fortunately he'd gotten around to forgiving me for the last time I'd involved him in a case. He checked it out, and sure enough, my hunch was right. Poison. The kind that puts a man out for hours. Right. hit the streets, go see the daughter, or head out to the tent revival site? Any preferences? While I'm renewing my throat, I'm not sure I'll be able to keep up with this. Yeah. Tent revival, Rachel. 50-50 so far. I love this music. Love it, love it. I'm so bad at visual novels, by the way. Yeah. Well, I remember that Molly got in on Tent Revival for the first choice, so let's do that one first and then go see Rachel. Oh, no. No, 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 no. Danger, Will Robinson. If they're not harrowed, I will be fucking amazed. Also, never trust a man wearing a suit that looks like that. Never trust anyone wearing a suit that looks like that. I made my way out past the city limits, where some farmer had given up a huge part of his fields for the circus that Gospel Devino had brought in. Don't trust that jawline either. They do, don't they? Well, Knight, you'd know. How the hell do you always manage to draw harrowed, I don't know. A huge, colourful sign hung over the whole mess, reading, "The Gospel Divine, Revelations and Redemption Revival, all sinners welcome." It was nice to feel like I was invited. Yes! Dozens, maybe even hundreds of folk were busy with any number of tasks, or milling about and talking with each other like they were the church social, which I suppose was pretty much the case. There was one huge, big top-style tent in the middle of the gathering, with smaller tents, trailers, and temporary buildings sprung up like mushrooms in a cow pasture. That was apropos, since we actually were in a cow pasture to start with. Two things caught my attention right away. The first was how the big tent was clearly being guarded at all entrances, and it looked like only a very select few were allowed in or out. Folks dressed far better than the average hanger-on seemed like they had some kind of authority or special role in things. Anyone else who got too curious about what was behind the flaps was rather forcefully pushed back by the guards. That was the other thing that got my attention. The guards. All of them were huge men dressed in black suits with black shirts, no ties. And they all had an X branded right on their foreheads. Oh my god, it's Page XX. Sorry. Vampire the Masquerade joke. As the horror of that particularly creepy bit of business settled in, the dapper gentleman picked his way through the mud and manure towards me, carefully stepping on the straw that had been hastily strewn about to cover most of the mire. Greetings, Pilgrim. I'm Brother James. Have you come to wash away your sins and become part of our movement? I tried to smile, though the look of the guards weighed heavily on me. His slightly smarmy nature didn't actually do a lot for my disposition either. Tent revivals are weird. They're a very strange thing. The fact they're still going is a bit weird. I think their spiritual descendants are the ones who ended up in the mega churches. The ones the size of Wembley. Brother James, while I appreciate your concern for my soul, I doubt you've got enough water or wine out here to wash away all my sins. Actually, I'm here to see if I can talk to Mr. Gospel Devino. Brother James' expression didn't change one iota, his smile still perfectly planted on his face. Nonetheless, I got the distinct impression he'd already decided he didn't like me. That was fine. Most people don't like me when they first meet me. People tend to like me even less after they get to know me. God is mean. Many wish to seek the blessed wisdom of Brother Gospel Divine, sir. He tries to reach out to all, but I'm sure you can understand he's a very busy, very involved man. He'll preach tonight, as always. If you join us for the nightly service, I'm sure his words of inspiration and guidance will reach you, brother. It was clear Brother James was fishing for my name. Though I had no inclination to add him to my family tree as a brother, I obliged him. After all, it's the polite thing to do when you're snooping into a man's business. Jenkins, Harvey Jenkins. Produced my credentials. Private investigator. This time, Brother James's expression did change. The smile slightly faded, and he was clearly moving into a defensive frame of mind. They all do when they see the badge. I'm quite certain, Mr. Jenkins, I have no idea what this is about, but I can assure you we have all the necessary permits and licenses. While a number of folks have claimed some concern for family members who've joined us, no one here is here unless they wish to be. Cult. Really are a nasty little cult. There are a few esteemed members of law enforcement and local government even who are among our ranks. There are no irregularities for you to investigate. He said that last word with a certain amount of disdain, like most people say the word fornicate. I put on my pleasant, patient face. It doesn't look too different from my usual face, except it makes me look a little less like I'm about to punch or shoot you. James, I'm sure all that is fine. I'd just like to ask the good Brother Divine a couple of questions. And yes, isn't it nice of him? Regarding? That didn't come from persnickety Brother James, but from a golden, powerful voice behind him. We both turned to see a man in a pure white suit with a white shirt and a white tie. He had on a white fedora and carried a silver cane with a golden cross on top. He was flanked by two of those huge branded men, with a lovely scarlet-haired lady carrying a notebook next to him. Her black skirt was hip-hugging and just barely decent in length. Barely. He strode up confidently, and every single pair of eyes in the area was on him. Looks of adoration came from most, save a few who spared me looks of a far less than that. He seemed incapable of getting any muck or mud on his pristine suit. I'd have paid good money for that ability. Red Converse. He's clearly in high tops. Excuse me, Molly. Sorry, you just caught me on the hop then. Was this man carrying a bucket of fried chicken? It's fine. I aspirate coffee all the time. It's all good. Brother James leapt into explanation. Brother Divine, you've no need to concern yourself with this matter, I assure you. I'm channeling C-3PO, and I don't know why. This is just another one of those PIs some non-believer has hired to try and convince a loved one to abandon our cause. Does this happen a lot? It's alright, yeah, don't worry about it. Entirely my own fault. Gospel Divine wasn't a large man. In fact, he was a bit on the short side and skinny to boot, yet his presence was formidable. So handsome he was practically pretty, and oozing charisma out of every pore. If I hadn't already faced down things from the pit of hell a few times, I might actually have been impressed. He appraised me carefully as he spoke. Is that true, sir? You're here to try and convince a member of my flock to leave us? I looked him straight in the eyes. I got the impression he wasn't used to that. I couldn't tell if he liked it or hated it. No, sir, nothing like that. I'm just here to ask you a few questions about the disappearance of Reverend Paul Kellerman. There. So often it comes down to just saying the right thing at the right time. If you know what to watch for, and any PI who wants to make a living of this figures this out, it comes down to the reaction to your words in that one moment. Devine was good, I had to give him that. Nothing, not a twitch, not a tell of any kind. I might as well have said, I just came from a cheeseburger and some fries took a wrong turn, for all the reaction I got in the moment. No, it was Brother James and the redhead who gave it away. She focused just a little too intently on her notebook, and James's eyes narrowed just for an instant before he caught himself. Just like a really intense game of poker between two sharks, Gospel Divine and I both knew what had happened. I had him and he knew it. He was a pro though, and the game still had to play out. Yes, I'd heard about that poor man being kidnapped the other night. He and I might not see eye to eye on matters of the spirit, Mr. Jenkins, but I still consider any harm brought to a brother in Christ to be a terrible tragedy. If you're looking into his disappearance, I'm grateful. I am, however, unclear on how I might be of help here. Time to play my trump. Well, sir, considering you and his daughter have some kind of relationship, I was rather hoping you might have some dealing with the Kellermans lately and could help me in the sense who might have had it in for him. A slight smile played at one corner of his mouth. He was actually enjoying this. Ah, Miss Rachel Kellerman. Yes, she and I have had a correspondence. Though I consider it to be of a private nature, I will reveal to you that she and I have a certain level of agreement where her father's overly tolerant nature is concerned. I've been hoping to meet her in person while here, but we've not managed that just yet. I'm sorry, but if that's all, I'm afraid I have a service to prepare for. Oops, missed that. So, beach tactical withdrawal. After all, I really didn't like how those giants with the branded foreheads were looking at me. Honestly, Mr. Deverneau, please, Mr. Jenkins, call me Divine. Yeah. Yes, they're having correspondence, really intense letters. Fair chance. So I just felt like such a large congregation of spiritual folks might have some helpful information. I can see you're very busy, so I'll let you get back to your work. I handed the redhead my card. I was pretty sure no one ever handed Gospel Divine anything directly. If you do come across any information, I would be grateful to hear from you. I turned to go at that, for when this part of the game was over. Not quite. Mr. Jenkins. His voice rang like a bell, and I couldn't help but stop in my tracks and turn to face him again. He strolled very purposefully towards me, and I was shocked to see even his bodyguards held back. Brother James was already on his way to instruct others in one task or another, and though it was clear their leader had one more thing to say to me, most folks seemed inclined to stay out of business that didn't concern them. The glares of the bodyguards seemed to help in that. Deverneau called up to me, and he stood close enough to speak at a near whisper. You've been touched, Mr. Jenkins. Touched by shadows, by darkness. We both know it. He looked at me intently, obviously expecting some kind of response. I didn't oblige him. He went on. My ministry could use one with your gifts and your experience, sir. I promise you the rewards would be most... He glanced back at the redhead who was looking nervously our way. Fulfilling. I can also promise you that anything that interferes with the running of the ministry runs the very real risk of facing terrible wrath. God's will must be done, Mr. Jenkins. It must be done. I just stared at him for a long moment. I could have gone the usual "is that a threat" route, but again, we both knew the game well enough to avoid the cliché. Of course it was a threat. It made his play to recruit me, now it was my turn. Yes, exactly, Fish. You show us on the doll where the shadows touched you. I know a handful of folks who feel pretty particular about God's will, Mr. Deverneau, and I'm pretty sure they don't agree with you on just what that means. Then I smiled, turned, and walked away from him, saying over my shoulder, "And I'm pretty sure you don't buy the crap you're selling either." Okay, well, he's dodgy as shit. So we've got a cult recruiter operating out of a tent revival. So there's fun. He's definitely got something going on with the daughter. The redhead might have something else to say. So I can hit the streets, I can visit Rachel Kellerman, or I can go see Mama Bonte, who's new, who I'm guessing is the Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. And I'm going to be aces away from going into the song now. I believe Rachel Kellerman was next on our list. Yeah. Uh-huh. What is it about preachers' kids that always puts them in the middle of the worst kinds of trouble? Exactly, yes. Yeah, I know. Pretty dumb question to ask. Truth to tell, Rachel Kellerman was the least like the stereotype I'd ever met. Her brown hair was perfectly coiffed in the latest fashion, and her clothing, while not quite society elite, was certainly of a style and cut that spoke volumes about the circles she was used to traveling in. She exuded class and poise with just the right mix of prim and proper presence and an undertone of pure sex. As you can tell by the fact that the saxophone has seriously kicked in. Then again, maybe she was more a preacher's daughter than I figured at first blush. We met in the sitting room of her very fine town home with a pot of tea steeping and tasty little cakes at hand. Don't make a comment about the fact you can see the tasty little cakes through the blouse. Or in fact the line from CoverGirls, which is, "We're going to need considerably bigger buns." I had to pass through two solid-looking uniforms to get through the front door, and it was only because Rabbi Saul Kosh asked the mayor personally to have the police cooperate with me that I made it this far. There were two more bright and shiny young cops in the back, and a patrol car made a regular pass around the neighborhood. Apparently the city was taking the Reverend's kidnapping pretty seriously. Sitting with us in the nice little room was a lump of tan slacks and white rumpled shirt named Hal Blake. He was nervously playing with an unlit cigar, sticking it in his mouth one minute, fidgeting with it the next. What? I've got content warnings up for dodginess. Clearly, Miss Rachel Kellerman wasn't having any smoking in her fine place, which was fine by me. Anything that made Hal Blake unhappy made my day just a little bit better. Hal was an ex-cop in the way a guy least wants to be. Fired for being on the take. He was accepting bribes from competing crime gangs and it was making his bosses look bad. Blake went from a disgraceful police career to a fairly dismal PR business. He did have the one advantage of being a really good shot, and having a pretty fair rep as a bodyguard, which was how he was making his rent most days. Hal and I got along mainly by avoiding each other like bad diseases, which of course wasn't working out very well today. I chose to ignore him, he chose to glare at me. So you say you didn't see your father at all the day he disappeared, is that right, Miss Kellerman? She leaned forward to start fixing herself a cup of tea, letting her blouse open just enough to hint at the rather exquisite décolletage she made such efforts to barely conceal. Mr. Jenkins, I've certainly regaled all these facts to the police detectives to great exhaustion. Sure you can just read the reports they've taken. Yeah, we're going with Southern English because I can't. Nope, can't do it. Her genteel Southern accent absolutely flowed like honey from her ruby lips. And there was no mistaking the subtle sense of mere toleration of my intrusion in her manner. Nonetheless, she was the perfect hostess, also pouring me a cup of tea, and with raised eyebrow and a mere nod, figuring out how I liked it. Avoiding like a bad disease, so gathering frequently unmasked without maintaining social distance. Yes. That is badly avoiding disease. As with all things, straight was fine with me. She then set a tiny little cake on the same saucer as the tea and handed it to me with absolute grace and a fine smile. She didn't offer Hal anything. I just couldn't help myself. I tasted the cake and made a satisfied face, then took a sip of the tea. I hate tea. Utterly. I hated Hal more, and the extra heat in his glare made the swirl worth swallowing. They didn't say what kind of cake, just little amuse-bouche, I would assume. If they fit on a saucer, then they can only be little tea cake. I want to believe they're French fancies, and I don't know why. There's no Pride Month on it. Yeah, not that kind of straight, Sam. I set down my saucer and cup. Ma'am, I just want to be sure, since there's some evidence to suggest that someone was there in the office enjoying a cup of coffee with him at the time he was taken. You don't know what a French fancy is? It's not kinky or anything. It's a little block of sponge with fondant, so with buttercream icing on top, covered in fondant. Google Mr. Kipling French fancy, and you'll be on the right track. Okay, Molly. The vibe was a bit more nice about it. I really like French fancies, but bastards aren't safe. You can get vegan ones. I've had them once and they're lovely. They're almost worth an allergy attack for. There, that was the moment. Hal's constant fidgeting with the cigar paused and there was a flicker in her eyes. I've been at this too long to miss such things, which is part of why I make any money at this job. Of course, it's also the kind of thing that's likely to get me killed. Perhaps even today. Mr. Jenkins, she went on, decidedly cooler in her tone. I'm not quite sure I understand what you're implying. My daddy loved Mama with every bit of his soul, and I'm certain he hasn't so much as thought of another woman in the year and a half since her passing. Hal was still fidgeting, only he wasn't glaring at me so much. I consider this a clue. I'm a real pro that way. You're living through the aftermath of a box of lemon fancies at the moment. You know, but they were reduced. No, I can see your point, Fish. What you should have done is shared. And then we'd have both suffered a little bit. Miss Kellerman, I meant no disrespect. I'm just trying to help your father, same as the police. Hal finally spoke up, even though Rachel had made no indication she wanted him to. He apparently didn't make a very good trained goon. Geez, Harvey, you not get a look at that blonde on the church? Gotta figure she might have a cup of joe with the preacher every once in a while, yeah? Rachel glanced ever so casually at Hal, then nodded and smiled at me. Yes, I'm sure that's it. Mary's very loyal and friendly to Daddy, and I'm sure it's nothing more sinister than that. Pointed out I'd already determined she was nowhere around at the time of the kidnapping, as well as the fact that the shade of lipstick that had been on the coffee cup matched Rachel's perfectly, didn't seem the wisest move just now. Instead, I just smiled, stood up, and nodded respectfully. No worries, Miss Kellerman. I'm sure you're right. Sorry to have bothered you. Have a fine day. I put on my hat and showed myself to the front of the house. Hal Blake followed me none too subtly. Why don't you go find some cheating creeps to peep on, Harv? This one's out of your ballpark. Better than bringing a football like you to a baseball game, Blake. It wasn't good, but it was all I had since I was plenty distracted. I'd caught a glimpse of a stack of mail that someone had nudged up against on the way past the little table up to the front door. I'd always had sharp eyes. The day I couldn't see so great anymore would be the day for me to buy a fishing boat and make for the Florida Keys. There'd been one piece of mail I thought very telling, and I meant to find out what it was telling me. It was directly addressed in flowing script to one Rachel Kellerman. The return address, also handwritten, featured one Gospel Devereux. Oh, lunch in Manhattan. Oh, gosh. No, I'm really jealous. I hope you have a fantastic time. Also, hope you're enjoying the time with the family. It's got to be good to be travelling again. Oh, this is good. This is going to go well. Just before I do this, let's just have a save, shall we? As I made my way down the sidewalk, I spotted two pieces of walking granite matching my pace across the street. Black suits, black shirts, no ties. Nasty X branded on their foreheads. I was starting to think about which alley to duck down when two more stepped out right in front of me. One pointed and shouted even as the first two broke into a run towards me. We have come to bear witness! Okay, let's see if I can take these chumps. Nothing for it but to run the high ground. Don't they always tell you to go for the high ground? It does, doesn't it? Sounds lovely. So, I don't want to have a fight with 4 of these lumps of muscle. Yeah, I can't help wondering what they mean by the high ground. Oh, thanks. I noticed suddenly everyone's... No, it's entirely up to you. It's your decision. It's your game. Shall we go the high ground? The odds are rarely in my favor whenever I find myself in a fight. What few friends I have in this world tell me it's karma or the sins of my past. I think it's just the nature of my business. A lone investigator snooping into the business of powerful people who can afford to hire groups of folks to bait the crap out of me. Yeah, cheers, fish. Plan. I could run, but that wouldn't tell me much about these guys, and I had a feeling I needed to know just what I was dealing with. A stand-up fight wasn't a good idea either. I've been known to handle myself well in more than a few one-on-one brawls, but it takes a special kind of stupid to think you can go the distance with 4 sides of beef at once, even if you have some heat. Besides, I didn't like shooting anyone if I didn't have to. The paperwork is a real pain in the ass. Doc Carver was in the big one, and he always talks about the high ground beat when things get dangerous. Seemed like a solid plan this time, so I dove into the alleyway the 2 new arrivals had just left and made for the nearest fire escape. Oh, hello. That went through too fast. So far so good, but I was starting to think I needed to elaborate on my plan a bit. After all, once we got to the top, it was pretty much the same story, only now they had gravity to play with when they got their hands on me. Gravity. See, Doc, I do pay attention sometimes when you start spouting all that science stuff. Instead of making my way up the ladder to the second landing, I grabbed the underside of it and braced myself just as the first big man made his way near the top and started reaching for me. Oh, hello. Screen shake. He was just starting to shout, "We shall bear witness," at me again, when I firmly planted both feet square into his pie hole. Interesting squelch. Teeth shattered and he lost his grip, plummeting back down the ladder and taking his 3 friends down with him. I slid like a fireman down the ladder after them. The one I kicked was already out and the one right behind him was nearly down for the count. The other 2 were scrambling to their feet, but I managed to grab a brick on the ground and clock both of them before they got their bearings. I was pretty upset by the fact I had to hit each of them twice to make it stick. I popped the nearly down one in the back of the head with the now busted brick, then paused to let the shock of the fight wear off a bit, while I looked to see if there was any more trouble coming. Once I was satisfied things were done for the moment, I checked out my playmates. Each of them was wearing some kind of really odd medallion around his neck. It was an iron circle with some kind of weird lines on it. I think I'd heard some things like this called runes once or twice. I went ahead and took all 4. Then made my way out of the alley. The last thing I needed was some wandering patrolman deciding he needed to run me in for questioning. Okay, do I ask around the streets or do I go see Mama Bonte? Probably Voodoo Queen of New Orleans. It's always interesting hearing about chains that just don't exist over here. Hit the streets and then go see the Voodoo Queen. Okay. If the accent's bugging people, by the way, I apologise and I will stop if need be, okay? There were plenty of fun, safe places in New Orleans. The kind of places folks go to have a nice dinner, hear some great music, and enjoy the beauty of the city. Those aren't the kind of places I go on days like this. Seedy dive bars, old docksides with rotted wood and rotted fish, back alleyways that get the wrong people robbed or dead. You can say laugh, Sam, it's okay. These are the places I wander when I need to get a feel for what's happening in this city. These are the places I haunt like a grey-suited ghost. Fortunately, Rabbi Kash's check was good, and I had plenty of green to spread where I needed to. I soon figured out a few interesting things. For one, the streets were a lot less crowded with bums and the down and out. Seemed like Gospel Divine's revival was offering food, work, and more to anyone who wanted to come out, hear the word, and pitch in. Desperate folks can find an awful lot of religion in their bones when there's a hot bowl of soup and a couple of dollars in it for them. Yeah, when I need to roll my streetwise or gather information. Yes, absolutely. What disturbed me more by far were the tales of very large men in black suits and black shirts with no ties and strange brands on their foreheads. Apparently they never spoke, instead just standing around and watching other folk intently. From what I could put together, they seemed mostly focused on folks who'd gone to see Gospel Divine but didn't sign on to his cause or donate any money. When the local constables got around to asking some of these guerrillas about their business, apparently the only thing they said was, "We are here to bear witness." This was sounding more and more like a confidence game with a shakedown element. I was hoping that was all it was, but a man doesn't easily take a brand to the forehead just to scare money out of folks. I was beginning to think these witnesses were going to be real trouble. Okay, so I'm inclined to say it's time to go have a chat with Mama Bonte. Because I don't think we've got enough to go back to Rachel just yet. Yourself in a mess again, child. Cocoa skin and the smoke and silk voice with that Creole spice made my spine tingle every time. Is there a single woman this entire game you've not just been eyeing up? Mama Bonte and I had something. Oh, okay. There was no point in defining it or making it more than it was. Fair. Okay, you're... alright. You get a pass on this one. Emily Bonte. I like that. Yeah, I've got Bon Jovi, unfortunately. Dancing with the Queen of New Orleans. We simply understood each other as a part of the city most folks don't even want to think about, and we helped each other as best we could. There are worse ways to conduct a relationship. I think I can blame you a bit for this one, sweetness. I gave her a challenging look. She just laughed. Fair enough, Mr. Jenkins. Fair enough. You being tough to kill will probably be helpful this time round, too. There'd be bad mojo work, no mistake. That Gospel Divine don't be bringing the Lord to New Orleans, he be bringing the devil. And it gonna get real ugly real soon you don't figure out how to deal with him. I don't suppose you got any ideas about that, do you? I really hated dealing with magic and monsters, and yet it seemed I was somehow linked to them every time I turned round. Exactly, Charlotte, it's noir. I was pretty sure I had my grandfather to blame for that. Me and Daddy Thunderhand been looking into it. You get me something I can work with, child, I may be able to help you. Man like Gospel, he gotta be messing with powers he don't quite understand, and that usually means talismans and such. Get me something like that, and I think I can work you up a way to handle things. Maybe. Great, now I want to go back to Deadlands and look for Kellerman's. Jenkins's, even. I didn't like the word maybe, especially not when my continued breathing hung on it. Right, however, I do have, because I beat the crap out of those goons, I've got their medallions. Well now, Mr. Jenkins, these be real interesting. Talismans they are. Somebody be using them to make men into something else. Something strong, tough, and very loyal to whoever be working the mojo. Mama Bonte was studying the trinkets I bought her very carefully, and it was clear she was more than a little concerned about what she was seeing. In fact, she looked downright angry. This be like some very bad magic, black magic I've seen more than once, Harvey. Very bad. Make a person into a thing, take away their life forever. Ah. Now, that could be worth knowing. I'm going to have to check Deadlands Noir because I do have all the books. I think I now have everything published for Deadlands Noir. Even after you take this off them, they're never going to be the same again. A ghost of what they was, with no hope and no path. Most of them will just find a way to end their life because they can see no light without the one who made them like this in the first place. I grimaced at that. I'd left those guys to wake up and just go look for a way to die. Still, not a whole lot I could do about that right now. So, how do I deal with this, Mama? How do you fight this kind of monster? She looked at me and a moment of real concern passed through those deep black eyes. Harvey, you try not to deal with him. You can help it. I started to protest, and she held up her hand. But I know you, Emmy, and you're going to finish what you start. Keep one of these, it may help. You get into anything with some of them again. Meantime, I look into what I can do to give you something stronger. Gonna need time, though, so try not to get killed before I get done. That was fine advice by me. I was rather fond of not getting killed at all, frankly. I died once. It wasn't a habit I wanted to get into. Is he a Harrowed? Is our hero Harrowed? That would be cool. Apparently I lied when I said I was only going to do Harvey's voice, by the way. So, Rachel Kellerman it is. Oh shit. It didn't look like I was going to get my second interview with Rachel Kellerman. The front door was busted wide open, half off the hinges. The two uniforms were lying dead on the stoop. One's neck was broken, the other's face was smashed in. I could still smell the gunpowder. They'd gotten shots off. Apparently it hadn't mattered much. I pulled my .38 anyway and went inside Rachel's place. Looking down the hall, I could see the wide open back door where the other two cops were also mangled up. In Deadlands, yes, basically if you die, there is a chance that you can be brought back from the dead by an evil spirit who can reanimate your body. Now, some people are still in there. Some people are still in there and have 50-50 control over their bodies with the Manitous that control them. It's tricky. It's tricky, but yes. And Knight has managed to play them at least twice. The whole place was a trashed mess and the power was out. I lit a candle and started looking around some more, hoping against hope I might find someone still breathing here. I found him in the busted form of Hal Blake. His back had been broken like a twig, his eyes were bulging from the excruciating pain, and blood was pouring out of him from places it shouldn't. God. Yeah, I don't know how you manage it. It's well impressive. Yes, Fish, I'm kind of looking forward to sticking Mary in something. The Harrowed who was once your character's betrothed. His gun clearly empty and lay nearby, and it looked like he was fiddling with that same cigar with his one good hand. The other was obviously paralyzed, along with most of his body. He eyed me warily at first, but when he realized who it was, he gave a slight, wheezy chuckle that erupted into a spasm of painful coughing. I knelt down next to him and looked at him eye to eye. We both knew he was not gonna make it. "Hey, Harvey. Back to see if you could score with that sweet frail?" "Jesus, Hal, what the hell happened?" As I asked, I took the cigar, lit it for him, and stuck it in his mouth. I hated the guy, but this was an awful way to go, and he deserved his last smoke at least. He inhaled deeply, coughed some more blood up. I was afraid I was going to lose him before he could tell me what happened, and then he looked at me with something that approached regret. "Never been any good, Jenkins. We both know that. But you gotta know I tried. I tried to fight those lummoxes off." Oddly enough, Chrono, similar has been sung so many times when Knight's creating Deadlands characters. And yay, Mulia. I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "Divine hired me specific to watch after her. Said he had a particular caring for her and wanted to make sure he had eyes on her all the time. All I had to do was report back to him about anything that happened or anyone she talked to." He looked away for a moment. I knew that meant me too. "Paycheck's a paycheck, Hal. No hard feelings." I hate you. Yes, hallowed be thy name. Exactly. I actually meant it too. He was in enough pain. "So tell me how this happened to you." He actually looked back at me with gratitude in his eyes and took another drag of the cigar. See, the problem I've got is if he was attacked by the possessed, bewitched guys from the revival, but he was working for the guy from the revival, that speaks to either another faction or him being disposable, which probably is disposable. After some more coughing, he went on. I could tell I was losing him, though, as he got that ashen pale look in his face. "Those giant books came busting in the place, screaming something about bearing witness or something. They tore through the flatbooks like they was nothing, and I emptied my piece into the first one in the room. He staggered and fell back, but he didn't fall. He didn't fall, Harvey. He clutched at my jacket, desperation in his eyes. What kind of monster don't fall when you shoot it like that?" Oh, sorry, got that wrong then. I couldn't answer him. There were too many in the world like that, to be sure. Oh, God! Yes! I was proud of that. I made use of those couple of minutes of control that the Harrowed had. He started to fade away, eyes closing slowly as he took another deep puff on his cigar. They grabbed the dame. I tried to fight him and grab her back. One picked me up and she broke me across his knee like I was kindling. Then you showed up. He smiled slightly. At least I got to go out like a hero for a change. That was the end of Hal Blake. I was thinking of writing a letter to his family when I heard the heavy breathing and the heavier footsteps. We have come to bear witness. Okay. So, let's see if this medallion does any good. This time I'm taking you guys down. Some like it hot. Well, since I have the medallion, I'm figuring... let's go with that. Oh, great. The power of Scotch compels you. As the witnesses closed in, I scrambled to grab my pistol out of the shoulder holster. Yeah, dumb move really, since Hal had just died telling me how little good shooting them would do. My hand brushed up against the medallion Mama Bonte had insisted I keep from my last encounter with these guys. I wasn't real sure how it was going to be of any use, but I was quickly running out of options. Struggled fully up to my feet and put my back against the wall even as they kept coming. I yanked the medallion out and held it out in front of me, displaying it for them to see in the flickering candlelight. Thankfully, it got their attention. They stopped and stared at it, almost like children watching a magic trick being performed. Shard, did you know it's traditional not to burn down the building when you're in it? I wasn't sure what to do next, though, and my sudden movement of hope expired as they growled in unison and started forward again. We have come to bear witness. For some strange reason, I thought of my mother. It occurred to me how completely offended she'd be by these guys, looking all religious while they did the kind of savage murder that made you think of the Spanish Inquisition. I couldn't honestly tell you why I did what I did next. Maybe it was the memory of my mother made me think of it. Maybe I was divinely inspired. Maybe I was just too desperate to think of anything else. I started reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father. They stopped, winced, growled again. The medallions seemed to grow warm. Who art in heaven. They staggered back, almost in unison. Whimpers of pain came from each of them, and their hands moved up to cover their ears. Hallowed be thy name. They started to scream, each one dropping to his knees. Blood began to pour from their mouths, turning their screams to gurgling, choking sounds. I kept intoning the prayer, hoping manically that I wouldn't forget part of it. I didn't. In another few moments, it was beyond certain that they were dead. As I spoke the final amen, the medallion suddenly went up in a fiery flash. I dropped it, but it was ashes floating to the floor by the time I fully let go. Stunned, I stepped over their bodies and made my way outside again. There was Mama Bonte standing on the front lawn, grinning, a shotgun in her arms. I told you to use that medallion to fight them. She looked me up and down. I got another one for you, and this one be special. Daddy Thunderhand and I make it a solid charm. He and the others be working a circle to try and protect the city, 'cause it seemed the gospel divine gonna bring some very black magic tonight. You best be going, child, or this whole city gonna be a mess. With a deep kiss, she gave me the medallion, which apparently had some kind of orals on it, and had also marked it up with a bunch of other symbols. I slipped it over my head, and then she handed me the shotgun and the box of shells. You want a real gun, timed like this, honey. I pulled up at the gate of the place and immediately knew something was wrong. It might have had something to do with the way the two witnesses were standing right in the way, staring holes through me. Absolutely not, Bissell. It could have had something to do with the way a sudden storm seemed to be rolling in right over our heads. Yay, Sky by ILM. I always love those. It might even have been the strange discordance between what sounded like very strange Bible hymns and a screaming woman. I was fairly certain, however, that it had a lot to do with the way the amulet around my neck was practically buzzing from vibration and glowing straight through my shirt. Even as the bruisers held their hands up to stop me, I hit the gas hard and ran right through them. Strong and tough as they were not up to a couple of tons of Detroit steel being pushed by a motor that had once belonged in a police cruiser. I like this guy so much. course, my car wasn't up for much up for running through human brick walls either. Fixing that grill was going to be on my expense report. I leapt out, shotgun in hand. One of the monsters was already getting back up. The medallion seemed to flash a little as I ratcheted around and fired. The witness screamed in agony and fell dead as I blew a hole in him. Bring your own accelerants! The hole was bigger than I expected, even for a shotgun. Thank you, Daddy Thunderhand. Silently thanking Mama Bonte for having the sense to get a real shotgun and on a breech-load double barrel, I ratcheted another round and made for the big tent. The show was in there, whatever it was. As I got closer, I could hear Brother Gospel Divine's voice ringing out over the chants and the songs, and even the screaming. Friends, brothers and sisters in Christ, the time has come at last. As I promised you, Revelations is at hand, Judgment Day is upon us, and we are the faithful army that the Lord has called to fight for this earth. Here at the heart of sin itself will rise up and wash away the stains of greed, sodomy and unrighteousness with the blood of those who have turned away from God. Can I get a hallelujah? The crowd screamed in unison, Hallelujah. 2 more witnesses came at me from the side. In rapid succession, I put them down. That left me 2 shots, which I used on 2 more running around from the other side. I quickly reloaded as I made my way to the other side of the tent. I could see that some folks had heard the shots. Mumbles and mutterings started to emanate from the crowd within. Detroit still does sound like either a cheesy noir protagonist or an 80s romantic lead. It does. Brother Divine didn't want to lose his audience, though. See? Already the minions of Satan come to disrupt our work. Fear not, brothers and sisters, for our witnesses will stand as a wall between them and what we do here. Not so much, Gospel, I muttered as I squatted down, yanked on the spikes holding the tent side down where I was, and then rolled up under and into the tent. What I saw before me stopped me in my tracks. There, in the center of the tent, up on a raised platform, Gospel Devino strolled about and addressed the crowd in the bleachers. He was still in his dazzling white suit, gesturing with his cane, only it was no longer a cane. Turns out it was one of those fancy schmancy cane swords, and he'd drawn the blade out. There were 2 metal arches with straps, one on each of the platform. Trussed on one was the Reverend Paul Kellerman. On the other, and the source of all the screaming, was his daughter Rachel. Gospel, why are you doing this to me? She pleaded, tears running down her face. I believed in you, supported you. For God's sake, I delivered my own father to you. He smiled beatifically. In fact, you did, lovely Rachel. In fact, you did, as any succubus from hell might in a misguided attempt to curry favor with an angel of the Lord. It's for naught, though. The Lord God has always demanded great sacrifices to work his wrath upon the world, and today I stand before my brothers and sisters, his appointed angel, ready to unleash his mighty anger upon this sinful city. Even as he spoke the words, and the crowd erupted with great cheers, I found myself dizzied by not 1 but 2 after images that were playing over him. One was a glowing white angelic form with huge broad wings. If that was what the folks were saying, no wonder he had them all eaten out of the palm of his hand. Yeah, exactly, Fish. The other, which was actually a little more pronounced for me as I touched the amulet, was an inky black figure with cold, white eyes. It seemed to almost cavort about as he continued pacing the stage, anticipating the carnage to come. It seemed particularly interested in Rachel. Every time it got near the Reverend, who was calmly praying with his eyes closed and had been since I came into the tent, the figure seemed to almost recoil. When it got close to Rachel again, it seemed to grow slightly. That's when I realized what I was seeing. It seemed like it was somehow feeding off her. With every shriek of horror, it seemed to laugh and grow stronger. The thing was feeding off her fear. And that's when I noticed the swirling shadows up in the top of the tent. Dozens, no, hundreds of inky black creatures swarming up there, hovering as though they were waiting for something. They all looked hungry. My eyes went down to the crowd in the bleachers, all caught up in Gospel's mesmerizing spell, and it finally hit me. He was going to put one of those things in each and every person here. They were all going to become part of his personal army of demon hosts. Even as I figured this out, a shout came from the stands near me. Some of the crowd had noticed me, as had some of the witnesses near the closest exit. So had the dark figure and Gospel Divine. I was going to have to do something fast before the whole place came down on me. Okay. Give me a moat while I sort my throat out. I'm enjoying playing Harvey a lot, but blimey, he's tough on the old voice box. So, my choices are, I've got to get the Kellermans out of here, or Gospel, he's the key, take him down and it's all over. Yes, hydrating. He's okay. I'm doing the hydrate. Yes. I'm not saying the voice is any good, by the way, but I'm quite impressed I've managed to keep it up so far for this whole episode. My fear is that Gospel possibly is invulnerable while whatever demonic thing is feeding on the girl. My thought is to knock her out, because then she's not afraid. But I don't know if that's an option. Get them out of here. Yes, that's true. Do not drop water on your keyboard. Whew. Yeah, you see, I have a concern that while he's still getting powered, things may not be going as well. And the question is, I think I've got to get the Kellermans out and then I can deal with Devereaux. I may not be right, but that's what I think that's what I'd do in the RPG. So I think that is what I will go with on this. And if nothing else, the Reverend definitely sounds like a blessed to me, not just a preacher. Emotionally, you want to get in the innocence away. Intellectually, it's not going to be easier to protect if the whole congregation is possessed. Yeah, this is the problem. If I pull his battery, hopefully he won't then be able to possess people. Well, we know that the Reverend's in innocence. The daughter's an idiot. I broke into a dead run before anyone could move, heading straight for the platform. Screams and shouts of anger erupted all around me, but my focus was on the Kellermans. Gospel screamed out, "Satan has sent his servant among us. Eternal salvation and glory to anyone who slays this man." Two men jumped at me from the front row of the bleacher I was just passing. I clocked one with the butt of the shotgun, then had to headbutt the other as he tried to wrap me up in his arms. More were coming, and I knew it wouldn't be long before they could just pile on me and it would all be over. I pointed the shotgun up in the air and pulled the trigger. With a thundering boom, it tore a hole in the top of the tent. Okay, have a good one, Chrono. Thank you very much for dropping by. Nice to see you. Enjoy the rest of your time there. That seemed to take the piss and vinegar out of the mob, at least for the moment, but now I had more witnesses bearing down on me. They were all yelling over and over, "We shall bear witness." It was more than a little unnerving. Whatever Gospel had been waiting for, it was clear he decided it was time to act. He moved with a purpose over to Rachel, brandishing his cane sword as he did. She started screaming even more intensely, which seemed to really make the shadow thing riding him even happier and larger. I blasted the guts out of the nearest witness in front of me, swerved to the left around the one behind me, and shot it in the back of the head as I finally hit the stairs on Rachel's side of the platform. Devereaux glared at me with pure hate, as did his shadow self. The radiant angel image was still just flapping its wings and looking glorious, seemingly oblivious to the utter chaos going on. Dimly I was aware of cops rushing into the tent from the main entrances. Shots were being fired, panicked screams grew in volume, and people were flowing everywhere like some crazy fruit drink in a mixer. I was guessing the men who hired me had convinced the police to get down there, or perhaps Mama Bonte called them. Either way, they weren't going to be any help to me in the next few moments. Mr. Jenkins, you stand in the way of a war that you cannot help to stop. This world was made ours many years ago, and we will claim it. Still full of charm and power, Gospel's voice had a different tone as he faced me, backing away and edging ever closer to Reverend Kellerman. Men like you are mere annoyances, nothing more. I offered you a chance to join me and finally claim the power you've only just brushed against. You still can, Harvey Jenkins. You can know power like you've never dreamed of. I just smiled at him. I dream about a double shot of Kentucky's finest, a cold beer chaser, and a steak dinner at the Bolton House. I think that's where I'll go when this is all over. I lowered my shotgun at him. Screaming, "No!" He lunged at the Reverend, clearly intended to run that blade right into his heart. At the last moment, instinct took over, and I shifted my aim. With a squeeze of the trigger, a massive slug slammed right into the juncture where Paul Kellerman's hands were tied, and he went flailing backwards. The whole arch then collapsed, taking him with it to the floor of the tent. Gospel lost his balance and fell after him, but his blade slipped from his hand and clattered to the platform. Yep, fish, that's what I'm thinking, corrupted by a reckoner. At the sound of another shriek from Rachel, I turned just in time to see Brother James coming at her with a wicked-looking curved knife. "The gospel will be heard," he shouted as he raised his hand. I just pointed and fired. Rachel was still screaming, of course. Genteel southern women tend to do that when they're covered in a man's guts and blood. I looked back around in time to see Gospel running like a madman for the side of the tent. Cops fired round after round at him, but that inky black demon thing apparently gave him plenty of protection. He plowed through the canvas and disappeared into the full-blown storm that had erupted outside. Rain poured down in buckets, but I didn't care as I wandered out into the night. There wasn't enough rain in the heavens to wash all the blood out of the last few days, but it was a start. Reverend Paul Kellerman and his daughter Rachel hugged each other fiercely as cops took them to a nice big car. He waved at me and smiled, and even she passed me a grateful look before burying her face back into his shoulder, the one that wasn't broken. He'd made me promise to come by and see him in a couple of days. I figured I would. I kinda owed it to him, since I've been the one who caused his other shoulder to be broken. He probably also needed to know some of the things I discovered about his daughter and her part in all this. I just hoped he wouldn't try to talk me into coming to church. I'd answered a few questions for the cops, but they were going to want to got more answers in the days to come. Fortunately for me, the mayor's sister was among Gospel's congregation, so he wanted to clean things up as quickly and quietly as possible. Between that and the mayor's gratitude for saving his sister's life, I got a pass tonight and I didn't have to go to the station. I was tired. More tired than I think I've been since Vince Giganti killed me. I opened my car door, tossed the shotgun in the back, and sat down in the driver's seat. Then I reached up to my neck and pulled off the amulet. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but I found myself hoping Mama Bonte and Daddy Thunderhand didn't want it back. After all, Gospel Devereaux was out there somewhere, and I was pretty certain I had not seen the last of him. That was the thought for tomorrow. For tonight, it was time to see a rabbi about a bonus. Maybe he'd like to join me for a steak, too. So, there we go for episode 1. Very short. I can see why the full game is only like 3 or 4 hours. So, I have episode 2, which is apparently using the Savage World rules. It's a shame there are only 2 episodes, but I do have both episodes. I am not, however, going to try episode 2 this evening. I had hoped to go top to bottom on it. But I've discovered that I really like doing Harvey's voice. But I can't keep that up for 3 hours. Not and have anything tomorrow. Voice-wise. So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I do have the Deadlands Noir game, RPG. I even have Deadlands Noir for Fantasy Grounds. So at some point I will be running Deadlands Noir. Can I have an objective opinion on the Harvey voice? Because I'm trying very, very hard to improve my acting. And I know it wasn't great, but I'm hoping it was okay. So yeah, that gives a decent feel, I think, to the game. Also, he's got to be a Harrowed, hasn't he? He's got to be back from the dead. and the method for coming back from the dead is with a Harrowed on board. He's got a Manitou. Sorry, it's as a Harrowed with a Manitou on board. So that's going to be interesting. So my decision is I can come back to this Thursday, or I can come back to this next Monday. So I think, yeah, exactly. 2 references to him being killed. Yeah, he has to be. So yeah, Harrowed. I will do episode 2. I am going to definitely do episode 2. Shall we make this next Monstrous Monday then? And I will do part 2. It's not a lot, but if I'm actually doing the acting, then it stretches it a little bit. So yeah. Okay then. Thank you very much. I am going to go and get a large drink of water. And yeah, I know that not everyone's available on Thursday, so it will be a better one. I'd like to do it with as many people as possible. So, thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Moliere, for remembering that while you were in business mode. I do appreciate that massively. Yes, I have now dropped off the end of any kind of governmental support in the UK. So I am entirely on my own, flying solo, and I would deeply appreciate any go-fees people felt like throwing in my direction. It's hugely appreciated. And there's going to be some news coming up on the Pocket Quest game I'm putting together for August. Not in details, obviously, because I want to save some surprises for the actual release, but yeah, it's moving along. Some stuff's happening on it. And I will be posting on my Ko-fi there first. So, thank you very much indeed. And I will see you guys around on Thursday for Tales From. So, I will bid you all a good night.